My name is Sabrina Walsh, and the moment my father told me I would never own a home like my brother, the entire Christmas dinner went silent. Not because they felt sorry for me, but because everyone at the table agreed with him. We were sitting in my parents' dining room in Boise, Idaho, the same room where every family celebration had happened for as long as I could remember. Same oak table, same green and red holiday plates, same fake pine centerpiece my mom insisted on using every December. I was 30 years old, single, wearing a sweater I'd bought on clearance, and according to my family, I was the failure. "You know," my dad said, cutting into his prime rib, his voice casual but sharp. "At your age, Connor already owned his first house. You're still renting. That should tell you something." My mom nodded without looking up from her plate. "He's always been more realistic," she added. "Some people understand how the world works. Others just dream." Across from me, my older brother Connor leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over his wife's shoulder, a smug half-smile playing on his face. "Hey," he said lightly, raising his glass. "At least she's consistent, still chasing that tech fantasy." They laughed, all of them. Not the kind of laugh that explodes, the worst kind. The quiet, knowing laughter of people who think they're being honest, not cruel. I didn't laugh. I didn't cry either. I just sat there, hands clenched under the table so tightly my fingernails cut into my palms, staring at the same family who had been telling me, in 1,000 small ways, that I was never enough. They had no idea what I'd been building. They had no idea what I owned. And they definitely had no idea how close they were to losing access to my life forever. But that night, I let them think they were right. Because silence, I learned, is power, when you're using it to build something bigger than their expectations. Growing up in a quiet Boise suburb, my family had a very clear definition of success: money, stability, approval. My parents, Stanley and Shirley Walsh, ran a small accounting firm downtown. They believed in spreadsheets, balance sheets, and careers you could explain in one sentence at a dinner party. They had 2 children, and from the beginning, only one of us mattered. Connor was 4 years older than me, tall, confident, and effortlessly good at everything my parents valued. Straight A's, debate team, business competitions. By 19, he already had internships lined up at local banks. Every report card of his went straight onto the refrigerator door. Every achievement was announced at family gatherings like a press release. "That's our boy," my dad would say, clapping him on the back. "Future CEO," my mom would add, smiling like she'd personally engineered his success. And then there was me. At 15, while Connor was memorizing economic terms, I was hunched over an old laptop in my bedroom, teaching myself how to code. HTML at first, then JavaScript, then anything I could find for free online. To me, building something out of nothing felt like magic. To my family, it felt like a waste of time. "Your little computer hobby won't pay the bills," my mom would say, standing in my doorway, arms crossed. My dad was blunter. "Coders end up in basements," he'd mutter, "not boardrooms." Connor loved piling on. "Stick to something practical, Sabrina," he'd say, smirking over his calculus homework. "You're not cut out for the real world." Their words stung, but I didn't stop. I just learned how to work quietly. Late at night, when the house was finally asleep, I'd sneak back to my laptop, the glow of the screen lighting up my room while I built small projects no one would ever see. Simple games, clunky websites, tools I didn't even know had names yet. I wasn't trying to compete with Connor. I just wanted to build. Family dinners felt like trials. Connor's achievements were trophies. My interests were evidence against me. The only person who ever noticed was my cousin Dawn. She was younger than me, quieter, always hovering near the edges of family gatherings. While everyone else rolled their eyes at my nerdy projects, Dawn would sit beside me, watching the screen. "How did you make that button move?" she'd whisper, like it was a secret. One summer, I showed her a simple game I'd coded, a stick figure character jumping over obstacles. "This is so cool," she said, her face lighting up. "You made this?" For the first time, I felt seen. Dawn would sneak me old sci-fi novels saying, "These are about people who build things, like you." Those moments mattered more than she ever knew, because everywhere else, I was invisible. School didn't help. Teachers compared me to Connor constantly. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" they'd ask, like they were offering guidance instead of judgment. By junior year, I stopped trying to explain myself. I stayed late in the computer lab, working on projects I never showed anyone except Dawn. I built a website for a local animal shelter, unpaid, just to prove I could. When they thanked me with a handwritten card, I folded it up and hid it in my desk drawer. Connor, meanwhile, was already talking about corner offices. "I'll be running a hedge fund by 30, he'd brag at dinner. My parents ate it up. "That's my future CEO, my mom would say. I'd sit there, pushing food around my plate, wondering if there was something fundamentally wrong with me for wanting something different. One night when I was 16, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. "Sabrina's smart," my mom said, "but she's throwing it away on that computer nonsense." My dad sighed. "She'll learn when she's stuck in a dead-end job." I didn't confront them. I went to my room, opened my laptop, and started building something new. A rough task manager app I designed just for myself. Every line of code felt like quiet rebellion, a promise to myself that even if no one else believed in me, I would. Dawn caught me working on it once and said, "You're going to make something big. I know it." I wanted to believe her. But deep down, I wondered if I'd ever escape my family's shadow. College only made the comparisons louder. At 18, I enrolled in computer science at Boise State University, excited and terrified. Connor was already working at a major financial firm downtown, driving a company car and tossing around words like bonuses and clients. Family gatherings became scoreboards. Connor climbed, I struggled. I lived on scholarships and part-time jobs, dragging my beat-up laptop across campus. Professors recognized my last name. "Are you related to Connor Walsh?" they'd ask. "The finance guy?" I'd nod, forcing a smile. "Computer science is tough," they'd say, like it was a warning. At Thanksgiving, my mom pulled me aside. "Why didn't you choose something stable?" she asked. "Like your brother." My dad didn't soften it. "Coding won't get you anywhere." That was when doubt started creeping in, until I met Leslie Hayes. Leslie was sharp, blunt, and brilliant with design. We bonded over late-night study sessions and bad coffee. She looked at my task manager prototype one night and said something no one in my family ever had. "You're good at this. Like, really good." Her belief felt like oxygen. Together, we built small projects: a website for a local coffee shop, a basic app for freelancers. Seeing real people use something I created gave me a rush I couldn't explain. I landed a low-paying internship at a tiny startup in Boise's creative district. The office was cramped, the lights flickered, and the pay barely covered gas, but I loved it. Connor mocked it. "Still playing with computers?" he asked at a barbecue, smirking. My parents agreed with him. "That startup won't last a year," my dad said. They didn't know what I was learning. They didn't know what I was becoming. And they definitely didn't know I was done trying to earn their approval. By the time I graduated, I made a decision that terrified them. I didn't take a safe job. I went freelance. I moved into a tiny studio apartment, barely scraping by, coding during the day, and building my own app at night. A project management tool designed for creatives, designers, artists, freelancers, people like me. My family thought I was failing. I let them, because while they were laughing at the dinner table, I was laying the foundation for something they would never see coming. And that silence was the beginning of everything. Freelancing wasn't the freedom my family imagined it was. It was waking up at 6 a.m, answering emails before coffee, and staying up past midnight chasing invoices that never came. It was pitching myself to small businesses who loved my ideas but didn't have the budget right now. It was pretending I was confident while my bank balance quietly dropped below numbers I didn't want to admit out loud. I worked from my tiny studio apartment in Boise, a place so small I could cook dinner, debug code, and fold laundry without taking more than 3 steps. The heater rattled in winter, the internet cut out when it rained, and still, every spare minute went into my app. Not because it was profitable yet, because it was mine. I didn't tell my family about it. I'd learned early that sharing unfinished dreams with people who don't believe in you is a form of self-sabotage. To them, I was the struggling daughter who refused to be realistic. Connor, on the other hand, was thriving. At 26, he was already climbing fast at his finance firm. Sunday dinners became his stage. He'd arrive in tailored suits, talking about bonuses, markets, and clients who owned things I'd only ever seen in magazines. "Closed another 7-figure account this quarter," he said once, swirling his drink like he was in a movie. My dad practically glowed. "That's how you do it," he said. "That's real success." My mom turned to me, her smile tight. "So, still freelancing?" It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. "You know," my dad added, not unkindly, "you could still pivot. You're smart. You don't have to struggle like this." Connor leaned back, smirking. "Some people just like taking the hard way." I swallowed the urge to scream. They didn't see the hours. They didn't see the discipline. They didn't see the thing I was building slowly, deliberately, in the dark. They only saw what fit their narrative. Leslie was the one who kept me sane. She met me at coffee shops, sprawled across my cluttered desk, and redesigned my app's interface again and again until it felt intuitive, clean, human. "You're not failing," she told me one night when I admitted I was scared. "You're just early." I wanted to believe her, but doubt is loud when you're exhausted. Some clients ghosted me, others paid late. One even told me my app idea was cute but unrealistic. "Apps don't make money," he said. "You need connections." For the first time, my family's voices crept back in. What if they were right? What if I was just stubborn? I was sitting in my apartment one evening, staring at a bug I couldn't fix, when my phone buzzed. A message from Stephen Cole. Stephen was a senior developer at the startup where I'd interned in college. Calm, observant, the kind of man who spoke only when he meant it. "Still working on that task manager idea?" he asked. I hesitated, then replied honestly, "Yeah, still trying." He asked to meet for coffee. I showed him my prototype, apologizing for the rough edges. He didn't interrupt. He didn't criticize. He just watched, asked questions, and nodded slowly. "This isn't just a side project," he finally said. "You're thinking like a founder." The word hit me harder than any insult my family had ever thrown. A founder. "You know this could be a real product, right?" he added. "Something teams actually pay for." For the first time in months, the fog lifted. Stephen didn't just help me debug code. He helped me think bigger, about positioning, about users, about building something scalable, not just functional. He never talked down to me, never compared me to anyone else. He just treated me like someone worth taking seriously. That shift changed everything. I stopped trying to please clients who didn't respect my time. I raised my rates. I focused on users who actually needed what I was building. Designers, creatives, freelancers drowning in disorganization. Slowly, painfully, it started working. Not explosively, but enough. Then Stephen introduced me to Ronald Lane, an angel investor, Boise-based, quiet reputation, known for spotting potential before it became obvious. I almost canceled the meeting. I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel impressive. I still felt like the girl at the Christmas table everyone laughed at. But I went. Ronald listened as I pitched my app in a shared co-working space downtown. I explained what problem it solved, who it was for, why it mattered. He leaned back, silent. Then he smiled. "This could disrupt a niche," he said. "It's rough, but there's something here." He offered to fund a beta version, 6 months of runway. It wasn't a fortune. It was validation. I walked out of that meeting shaking. For the first time, someone with nothing to gain from me believed I was building something real. I didn't tell my family. I kept living modestly. Same apartment, same car, same clothes. At family gatherings, Connor kept bragging. "Just bought a sports car," he announced one night. "What's your big win, Sabrina?" he added, amused. My mom jumped in. "You could still go back to school." My dad sighed. "Don't wait until it's too late." I smiled politely. Inside, I was watching my user count grow at 3 a.m, watching payments finally come through, watching something fragile turn solid. Every new user felt like a quiet victory, a refusal to disappear. I learned something important during that time. People who underestimate you don't need to be corrected. They need to be proven wrong. And proof takes time. By the end of that year, my app had paying users, real ones, enough to cover my bills, enough to hire help, enough to dream without apologizing. I was still exhausted, still doubting, still invisible to my family. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't lost. I was building. And that was enough to keep going. By the time I turned 25, my app was no longer fragile. It was alive. Designers in New York were using it to manage client projects. Freelancers in Austin emailed me at midnight saying it had changed how they worked. Small creative teams in Seattle signed annual subscriptions without asking for discounts. I'd wake up to notifications I never thought I'd see. Payments processed, new teams onboarded, feedback pouring in. The number in my bank account climbed quietly, steadily. into territory that would have stunned the version of me sitting at that Christmas table years ago. I didn't move. I didn't upgrade my car. I didn't tell my family. Success, I learned, is safest when it's silent. I opened a separate account, kept my spending boring, wore the same thrift store jackets to family dinners, let Connor keep playing the role of the accomplished son. At 29, he was a senior manager at his firm. He wore his success loudly. Expensive watches, European vacations, stories that always ended with applause. My parents still measured worth the same way. Connor talked, they listened. I stayed quiet. "Sabrina, you're almost 30, my dad said one evening, cutting into his steak. "You need to start thinking long-term." My mom added, softer but sharper, "Stability matters." Connor smirked. "Still waiting for that tech miracle?" I nodded, calmly. They had no idea my app was making more than Connor's annual bonus. And for once, that knowledge didn't make me angry. It made me free. With real revenue came real opportunity. I hired my first full-time developer, then a designer, then customer support. My little app turned into a company almost overnight. I started thinking bigger. Boise's creative district had always fascinated me. Old warehouses, brick buildings with character, half-forgotten spaces begging to be rebuilt. I wanted a headquarters that felt like what I'd built. Unconventional, intentional, mine. That's when I found the warehouse. Crumbling brick, broken windows, incredible bones. I bought it outright. Cash. I hired Laura Bennett, a contractor known for transforming old Boise buildings into modern workspaces. She walked through the property with me one cold morning, hands in her coat pockets, eyes sharp. "This place has potential," she said. "We can make it something special." For a year, the building transformed. Glass walls, open offices, a loft upstairs for me, sunlight pouring through industrial windows. I moved in quietly. Only Leslie, Stephen, and Ronald knew. To the rest of the world, and my family, I was still freelancing, still figuring it out. Then the tone changed. It started subtly. My mom began calling more often, asking about my work, telling me she was proud of how persistent I'd been. Connor stopped mocking me. He started asking questions. "You still coding? Business doing okay? Any big clients yet?" At first, I thought they were just curious. I was wrong. One night, my dad called. "Connor's considering an investment opportunity," he said casually. "He could use someone tech-savvy to look things over." I paused. "You want me to work for him?" No, my mom jumped in on speakerphone. "Just advice. Your family." Family. The word landed heavy. I declined politely. More calls followed. Hints, suggestions, guilt. Connor texted me directly. "You're good with systems. Maybe you could help streamline some things." They weren't interested in me. They were interested in what I could provide. And the more I stayed quiet, the bolder they became. At a cousin's wedding, Connor cornered me near the bar. "You've been awfully private," he said, eyes scanning me. "Must be nice not having real pressure." I smiled. He leaned closer. "You know, if you ever need help, my firm could set you up. Real money, real future." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something had shifted. He wasn't above me anymore. He was afraid. Afraid that whatever I was doing might actually be working. My parents, sensing the same thing, started changing their tune. "We always knew you were smart," my mom said one night. "You just needed time," my dad added. Time. Not belief. Not support, just time. I listened without responding, because I was done explaining my worth. The pressure peaked when my parents invited me to dinner, just us. They sat me down like it was an intervention. Connor needed capital. The market had shifted. Family supports family. "You've done okay for yourself," my dad said. "Maybe you could help." I stared at them. Help how? A loan, an introduction, a safety net? They didn't ask if I wanted to. They assumed I should. For the first time, anger rose, sharp, focused, clear. Not loud, not explosive, controlled. I realized then what they'd always seen me as. Not a daughter, not an equal, a backup plan. I said no, calmly, firmly, and their faces hardened. That was the moment I knew silence wasn't enough anymore. Sooner or later, I would have to show them everything. And when I did, nothing would ever be the same. I turned 30 the same week I decided I was done hiding. Not because I needed their approval, but because I needed the truth to stop living in my chest like a secret I was suffocating under. So I invited my parents and Connor to dinner. Not at their house, not at a restaurant. At my building. The warehouse in Boise's creative district. The one I owned outright. The one my company operated from. The one that held every late night, every doubt, every risk they had laughed at. I didn't tell them what it was. I just said I had something important to show them. They arrived together, my parents in polite coats, Connor in a designer jacket, already scanning the place with a skeptical eye. "This area's getting expensive," my dad muttered as they stepped out of the car. Connor smirked. "Hope this isn't another pitch, Sabrina." I didn't respond. I led them inside. The glass-walled offices were still buzzing, designers at whiteboards, developers deep in code, quiet confidence filling the space. My mom slowed her steps. "Who works here?" she asked. "My team," I said. Her eyebrows knit together. We went upstairs to the loft. The dining table was set. The city lights stretched behind floor-to-ceiling windows. Connor finally laughed. "Okay," he said, glancing around. "Whose place is this?" I took a breath. "This is mine." Silence. Not shock, confusion. "That's not funny," my dad said. "I'm not joking," I replied. "I own this building, and the company downstairs." My mom's fork clinked against the plate. Connor's smile vanished. "What company?" I walked to the window and looked back at them. "The app you called a fantasy. It has over 1 million users. We're profitable. We've been profitable for years." My dad stood abruptly. "You should have told us." I shook my head. "No, you should have listened." Connor scoffed, trying to regain control. "Apps come and go. Real money lasts." Something in me snapped. Not violently, but decisively. "You don't get to dismiss my life anymore," I said. "Not after everything." My mom's voice trembled. "We were just worried about you." I met her eyes. "No, you were embarrassed by me." Connor crossed his arms. "So, what is this? You bringing us here to brag?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I brought you here to draw a line." My dad frowned. "You're being dramatic." That's when Connor said it, the sentence that burned everything clean. "You really think this makes you better than us?" he sneered. "You're still the one who couldn't hack it the normal way." I felt it then. Clarity. I picked up my phone, typed 4 words, and sent them. Their phones buzzed. They looked down and froze. "Get out of my property." My mom gasped. My dad stared at me like he didn't recognize his daughter. Connor laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. "You're kicking us out? Over your ego?" "No," I said calmly. "Over my boundaries." "This is insane," my dad snapped. "We're your family." "And for years," I replied, "you treated me like a disappointment you kept around just in case." Connor stepped forward. "You're going to regret this." I opened the door. "Leave," I said. "Now." They didn't shout. They didn't argue. They walked out, stunned, small, stripped of the authority they'd carried my entire life. When the door closed behind them, my hands shook, not from fear, from relief. The fallout came fast. Connor's world unraveled within months. Reckless investments, overconfidence, no safety net. The same family who had worshipped him scrambled to save face. My parents called, left voicemails, apologized in ways that sounded like negotiations. They needed help. I didn't answer. I sent one message. "I'm choosing peace." Then I blocked them. The only family member I kept was Dawn. She walked into my office one afternoon, eyes wide, pride written across her face. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said. "I survived it." I hired her, mentored others, built a company that valued quiet strength over loud ego. The money grew, but more importantly, so did my peace. Here's what I learned. You don't owe access to people who only believe in you when you're useful. You don't need to explain your dreams to skeptics. And you don't have to become louder to prove you're worthy. Sometimes the strongest thing a woman can say is, "No more." If this story feels familiar, it's because you've lived part of it too. And if you're still building in silence, keep going. They don't need to understand. You just need to finish what you started.